Deputy Mayor, Councillor Andrew Turner.
Ko te ahu Pātiki te monga tiru nei taku nakau. Ko whakaraupo te moana e mahea ne aku maharahara. Ko David Rawa, ko Sheila Akumatua. No York, England aho. No East Yorkshire o Kutipuna. Ke o hina hau taku kaika I nai nei. E mihiana ki ngā tohu o nene o whakaraupo o noho neo. Ko Andrew Turner taku ingoa. Te ahu Pātiki is the mountain that speaks to my heart. Whakaraupo is the body of water that alleviates my worries. I acknowledge my father David, I acknowledge my mother Sheila. I'm from York, England, and my ancestors are from various villages of East Yorkshire. I now live in Littleton, and I recognise the ancestral and spiritual landmarks of Whakaraupo, where I live. 12 years ago, pretty much in the immediate aftermath of the first earthquake of the Canterbury earthquake sequence, I was elected to the Littleton Mount Herbert Community Board in an election campaign that was interrupted by and that was overshadowed by earthquakes. 9 years ago, I was elected to council, notably by a margin of just 5 votes, to the council that had to get to grips with the council's finances, the council's insurance settlement, the council's relationship with government, and a massive rebuild of infrastructure as we recovered from those earthquakes. And 6 years ago, I became deputy mayor. A leadership role that I've loved, a role that I've had in 2 quite different councils. I was asked in an interview a few weeks ago what I enjoyed most about the role of deputy mayor, and my answer was that it's a role that allows you to become aware of and to get involved in so much amazing work which is going on in communities in all of the corners of our city. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Leanne for the confidence that she's shown in me in appointing me not just once but twice as her deputy. It's been a pleasure, and it certainly isn't lost on me that it's been a huge privilege. I'd like to at this point acknowledge everybody who helped me get elected in the beginning and to everybody who supported me at that time and over the years. It's interesting to reflect on what I've learned in the 12 years that I've been elected. When I first came to the Littleton Mount Herbert Community Board table in the Council Service Centre building, now demolished on London Street, that stood on the ground that's now the designated site for the Littleton Museum, gifted by Council, I had very little understanding of the Local Government Act. Lagoima, Part A's, B's, C's, foreshadows, motions, long-term plan processes, standing orders, policies, strategies, coming from the private sector, and the relative simplicity of self-employment. It was a highly unusual environment for me. I also had to learn very quickly that the wheels of local government turn very slowly at times, and that often the only way to achieve anything is by following due process, as frustrating and cumbersomely slow as that might sometimes be. All of those things that I had so little understanding of back in 2010 are now second nature to me. Tina Law noted in her analysis of Council's performance in August this year, and I quote, "Andrew knows the inner workings of Council inside out." I'm not quite sure how that happened, but I guess I've come a long way from being the guy who barely knew what a resolution of Council was, let alone having the confidence to move one at the beginning of the 12 years I've been here. I've also learned a lot about governance. I'm fortunate in my time on Council to have held a number of board roles and chairing roles. In the 2013 term, I chaired the Communities Housing and Economic Development Committee, affectionately known as CHED. I've chaired the Finance and Performance Committee. I deputy chaired the Finance Committee with Raf Manji as chair. And I've chaired various funding committees, hearings panels, working groups and the like over the years as well. I've been fortunate to hold governance roles with the Destination Christchurch Trust, the Canterbury Development Corporation, Transition Holdings, Christchurch NZ, CCHL, the Otatahi Community Housing Trust, the Christchurch Foundation, the O'Kane's Bay Museum, and the Rod Donald Banks Peninsula Trust. All of which are opportunities I've only had as a result of being elected to Council, and in fact, as a result of the confidence that my colleagues have had in me in appointing me to those roles. So thank you. Thank you for the trust. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the experience. I've been so fortunate to work with some amazing, committed people around this table in the 9 years I've been here. People who work long hours, people who are totally committed to their communities, people who are here just because they want to be here and that want the best for the city and for the communities they represent. I'm not going to call out individuals, but I do want to thank everybody who's been part of all of the 3 councils I've been part of and all 4 of the community boards for the experiences I've had working with you, for the knowledge that I've gained, and for some of the amazing memories that I'm going to take away. As a governance body, we would achieve so little without the staff that deliver on the decisions that we make and that support us in making them, that support the strategies that we put in place and the directions that we set. And I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge all of the staff of this organisation who we work with every day and who support our work as councillors. I particularly like to call out the Banks Peninsula Community Governance team who do a great job in difficult circumstances. And I'd also like to give a special call out to my EA Raywin. We've developed a particular way of working together which just seems to work. I've never been particularly good at being told what to do, but when Raywin tells me that I need to be somewhere or I need to prioritise a particular email or a particular piece of work, for once in my life, I do listen, sometimes. For 9 years, I've been the elected councillor for Banks Peninsula, an area that's certainly got its challenges. It's huge, it's remote, it's made up of different communities with different needs and aspirations from each other and from the rest of the city. In the old dual wards model, each of the community boards had 2 councillors, except for Banks Peninsula, where the councillor had to sit on 2 separate community boards. But being the councillor for Banks Peninsula has been a huge privilege. I can't think of a part of the city I'd rather represent, and I'd like to thank everyone on the peninsula who's made me so welcome, who's openly shared their knowledge and experience with me, who's been so generous, who's welcomed me into their home, into their community group, onto their patch. Everybody who's been very clear and very direct about what they want or need, and Peninsula people often are, but that actually has made my job a whole lot easier. And I guess you come to lists at this point in the thinking. Things I'm proud of, the financial strategy that didn't require the sale of assets, the relationships I've built with Mana Whenua, particularly on Banks Peninsula, the work I did with Peter Skelton on the Littleton Port Recovery Plan, which held to the long aspirations of Ngāti Wheke regarding the health of the Littleton Harbour, able to be realised through the Whakaora Healthy Harbour Plan. Albion Square, Turanga, the Linwood Pool, the decision to save the Town Hall, the Antarctic Gateway work, the establishment of the Housing Trust, and some good heritage outcomes that would not have happened without decisions made at this table, the Public Trust Building and the Peter Bevan Building on Manchester Street, now known as the Pink Lady. Things that we've dealt with: earthquakes, fires, floods, terror attacks, chlorination, the wastewater treatment plant fire, the pandemic. There have certainly been some challenges in the time I've been elected, but it's also good to focus on the good stuff. Citizenship ceremonies, and last night's was a great example. Civic awards ceremonies, and all of the amazing relationships that I now hold that I didn't have and couldn't have even dreamed of having when I first came here. So this will be the last time I'll speak in this chamber, as a councillor at least. I always said I'd step down while I was enjoying what I was doing, and whilst I felt I was still being effective. Nobody ever wants to outstay their welcome. Knowing when to step up is important, but knowing when to step down is just as important. And as the time since my announcement in February that I wasn't running for election again has passed, I'm increasingly more and more comfortable with that decision, and increasingly more and more looking forward to life after council. It's time. There are some things I'll miss terribly about the role. The people, the camaraderie, the ability to help people, the privilege of being a representative of the communities I love and that I'm part of, the ability to influence, the ability to make positive change, to make decisions, and to be involved in the whole breadth of the life of the city. And there are some things I will definitely not miss at all, which I'm not going to list. To finish, I'd like to thank Leanne, the Mayor, for her sound leadership over the last 9 years. I often say that we've been fortunate that Leanne has been the right person with the right skills at the right time in the right place. And I'd like to thank Leanne for everything, Leanne, that you've done over the 9 years. I'd like to thank all of the council and community board colleagues I've sat with over the years, past and present. I'd like to thank the staff. I'd like to thank those people in my life who are close to me, both personally and professionally, and who have advised me, who have calmed me down, who've encouraged me to see sense at times, encouraged me to keep some balance in my life, particularly my partner Glenn, who's been a constant support, particularly those people who supported me and advised me when I was considering my options for the 2022 elections. You know who you are, and thank you. I'd also acknowledge those others who are stepping down. Anne, the amazing work you've done for young people, the amazing work you've done in our community and in your community of Hallswell. Jimmy, the work that you've done with the multicultural communities and with that multicultural strategy is inspirational and something I'll always hang on to. And Anne and Jimmy, I've always enjoyed working with you. Leanne, I've already acknowledged, but thank you again for the opportunities that you've given me and for the opportunities that you've given and provided for the city. So that's a wrap, but you haven't seen the last of me yet. I'll continue to be involved in the life of the city and in the life of the peninsula. I'm not going anywhere. My feet stay firmly on the ground in Littleton and here in Christchurch. But now, with the even stronger connection to this place, to the people here, that the privilege of being elected for 12 years has allowed me to have. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
I knew one of them would get me, but Andrew, how can I thank you enough? I've always said that the ideal deputy is someone whose skills complemented your own. That's assuming you've got any skills, but I would assume some, and look for complementary skill sets in others who have served as deputy, and you have been more than ideal. You have been utterly and completely dependable and reliable, and I know that I have been able to call upon you no matter what the circumstances and no matter the length of notice. And you really truly have been my trusted right hand. You stepped in for me when I had to face an extremely difficult time in my life, and I will be forever grateful to you for what you have done for me personally. But you stepped in again this year at literally the 11th hour. I think you were contacted on Friday to see if you would get on a plane in the very early hours of Sunday morning to go to Adelaide for a very important sister city visit, one that involved a significant delegation of people travelling from Christchurch to Adelaide, and a substantial program of work once there. And Andrew immediately said yes. He went for the visit, and although there was, a sense of disappointment that I couldn't go. I've formed a good relationship with the mayor of Melbourne, Adelaide. She'll never forgive me. But she, the feedback that I had was that you led the delegation brilliantly, and the occasion was incredibly successful on every level. So thank you very much. And even last weekend, you welcomed people to the Transitional Cathedral, to the civic service to pay respects to the late Queen Elizabeth II, and then travelled to Wellington to represent our city at the National Memorial Service. Not only have you been an outstanding Deputy Mayor, but you are an outstanding Chair. Whatever role that you played, that you chaired, you always did so with dignity and respect for those that are sitting around you, and you led whoever was involved and guided the council through a range of very complex issues. And I'll just call out the long-term plan and the annual plan processes where you played such a significant role in your role as the head of finance and performance. Next week, you move on to the next chapter of your life, and I think straight away, pretty much, into the Rod Donald Banks Peninsula Trust. And I think you've described it as your dream job, and I can see why, because your home is Banks Peninsula, and this is a really important role. And I could just see you in it. I was so excited when I heard that you'd got this role that I think, actually, that's the second time I've hugged you now, because it was just that moment of feeling that this is a perfect role for you to play. They're very lucky to have you, just as our city and our council has been lucky to have you as a loyal servant to the city over the years. So thank you very much on behalf of the council, on behalf of the city, on behalf of Banks Peninsula, and good luck for what I know will be a highly successful future. Yes, it's my turn. So